Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. It is our last podcast before a race review. When you listen to this, it very well may be race week. How excited are you, Rob?
Oh, it's amazing. It just feels like the longest ever break in the sport. This feels longer than the summer break. This feels longer than winter testing. It's stupid. It's only been a handful of weeks, like 4 weeks or something, but it just felt like forever.
You made a joke when we were chatting recently. If they showed up to Baku without cars and just started running around the track, I'd watch. I'm so
Absolutely
desperate.
would. Absolutely would. But yeah, we've got a small matter of this week's show to get out of the way. We teased last week that we might have a collaboration episode coming up, which is exactly what ended up happening. So last year we got together with another US podcast, The Fifth Wheel, and we did a reunion episode with them, as you'll hear coming up later today, which was great. We just kind of got together, pulled the bones out of the first three races, which were obviously 6 years ago now, and and got ready to look forward to what we think the rest of 2023 is going to bring. So that was a nice little chat. That's coming up later. We've got news and social, Brian's video vault, Lizzie does DRS, and like you said, Brian, we get a race preview to do. I don't even know if we remember how to do those.
I don't either. I mean, it's going to be clumsy for us all as we kind of get ready. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of news, Rob. You want to lead us in on a couple of things here?
Yeah, I mean, right back at the beginning of the week, in fact, but I think not long after we dropped last week's episode, shock, horror, Carlos Sainz's appeal was dismissed.
I mean,
Um, you
as I've
called
been
it.
saying, nothing going to happen.
Yep, you were absolutely right. We didn't even get to the point of looking at it because they decided there was no fresh evidence, which again is surprise, surprise, because there wasn't any.
Dear Felipe Massa, your appeal from 47 years ago ain't nothing going to happen.
Yeah. We also then got the Schumacher family were taking legal action against a German magazine who published what they said was his first interview, but it was actually AI generated. I mean, it was all in German, and I don't speak much German, if any. But some of the taglines were kind of saying that I think in the article itself, it did allude to the fact by the end it was AI, but obviously their cover story, their other thing was made it sound like it was an actual interview with Michael, which
I
is just
mean,
in ridiculously bad taste.
so exactly right. That's exactly. There are things you can do, but there are things you shouldn't do. And while it's not a bright line, it's pretty obvious when you've crossed it. And I'm happy to hear the editor has been removed from their position because that was incredibly disgusting,
Yep,
in my humble
agree.
opinion.
And
And
talking to
then,
people that were removed
yeah,
of their of their role, Brian, why don't you take us through the next one?
well, I was actually looking for your take on this one. So James Allison has returned as Mercedes technical director. They had a reorganization. The teams had a bit of a disappointing start, and so he swaps roles with Mike Elliott, who's now the chief tech officer. I mean, maybe you know more than I. I think Allison had been in this role before, correct?
Yes, they're
Yeah.
going. It's like they've just kind of looked at this all and gone, "Yeah, this isn't really working. What should we do?" And someone's gone, "Well, why don't we go back to how it was before? Because it was like
Right.
all right back then."
Exactly. That's basically what it is. I mean, for anyone who works at a company where occasionally you'll see people rotate people amongst positions, sometimes it just doesn't work, and they're rotating them back, it seems.
Yeah, yeah, they are. It was. Uh, I don't even know. I'm going to hold my hands up here and say I don't even know how much impact that this really has on the day to day of what we're going to see for the rest of the season. Is this now something that now James takes control of looking forward to next year's car, or I can't imagine it's like the scene out of the A Team where now James gets locked in a barn and given all the bits and materials, and then a brand new Mercedes comes out of it, ready for
Cue
the
the
rest of the
music.
season. Cue the
Right.
music. BA Baracus welding stuff on. There's probably a cabbage launcher or something strange being added to it as well. But I don't know that this does much now. I don't know.
No, no.
Maybe a listener could let us know on Twitter. I really don't know if this will have any meaningful impact for the 2023 season or not.
In May for next year, we'd love to hear your thoughts at F1 Dirty Side on Twitter.
Talking of listeners, before we open up the video
Yeah.
vault, and this is just like I'm going to be very self-indulgent here, but I want to give a little quick shout out to an old school buddy of mine, Ian. Haven't seen each other for 20 years since my wedding, and in a ridiculous small world coincidence, found out that he travels on business a lot to a town which is about 5 minutes down the road from me, so we might have even walked down the street before and even not even realised we were passing each other. So we caught up with each other. We went out for dinner last week, and I found out that his son is a huge fan of F1 and does actually listen to the pod. So
Nice.
yeah, it was absolutely amazing catching up with him. When it's you haven't seen somebody for like that amount of time, you're like, ooh, are we still gonna have anything to talk about? And straight away we were just like completely back, like we'd never been apart. It was awesome. Yeah.
I'm always
So
surprised to find out you have friends.
I mean, I obviously paid him a lot of money to pretend to be my friend, but yeah, it was good. It was good, and good to hear that we reach across the ocean, right? So people are listening to us.
Love it. Love it. Well, this week's video vault, like the news, will be brief on purpose because I ran into a couple things last weekend that I just cannot wait anymore to talk about. And so, two things. One, I found a video. Wow, Formula One intro, the Slovak traditional version in the Ice King tour. It is 2 minutes. It is a small orchestra and some dancers doing the Slovak version of the F1 theme. It's fantastic. It's recent. It's like a week and a half old. But just wait. I'm going to take it up a level. So then I found a year old, the F1 theme, but it's Slap House. And I've got to just play a sample. This will be entered into the Brian Sapstats kind of jingle jangle options because it is so good. Here's a quick clip. I mean, it goes on. It is so good. I promise. Just listen to this.
Why have I got a vision of you wearing some kind of like illuminous headband and got glow sticks in your hand or something?
I mean, I was partying last night. If they'd put this on, it would have just crossed the streams. It's 3 minutes. It is amazing. Do you remember when I found... So there are very few listeners when we first started. When I found the mariachi theme, which then blew up when later that year they went to Mexico and they used it everywhere, but we'd kind of had it early. That's this. Yeah. That's this. The Slap House version is so good. But hold on, Rob. There's more. So then I'm scrolling the comments, and 2 months ago, again, this is a year-old edit from Home Extras, so shout out and kudos to Home Extras. Brian Tyler, he of the Formula One theme, found this 2 months ago and wrote, hell yes, and I wrote it. To which the comment section went insane. And so then I'm like, well, that's interesting. And so a couple nights later, when I should have been asleep, I started watching The Fate of the Furious, which is the Fast and Furious 8. And I notice across the screen the name Brian Tyler, and it's on my mind because of the Slap House. Brian Tyler, who does the F1 theme, did all the Fast and Furious song, like the whole. I can't even talk. I'm so excited. He did all the music for the Fast and the Furious, the conducting there. I mean, like, this is the greatest thing. His career is amazing. But anyway, Rob, you have a video as well.
I do. I've actually got one to put in the vault, which was I was watching Matt and Tommy of now P1 fame. They've got a video that's about 16 minutes long, which is about the history of qualification format through forever in F1. And how it's changed. I didn't realize it had actually changed as much as it has from watching this. And they basically rank each of them out of 10, going from a couple that really formats that only get like 1 or 2 out of 10 to the ones that they think are the best. I won't spoil it, but the one thing that he does mention that both of them love the current format, the 3-phase approach. But the one thing that he says he would do to it to make it even better, and I want your take on this, Brian, is Q3, once you get through to Q3, the order of Q3 should be set in reverse order from Q2 of whoever makes it through, and each of them go sequentially and get a 1-lap shootout.
Oh,
so
cool.
you yeah, I think that would be amazing, don't you think?
I do.
So that's it. You've got one shot at doing it, and the order, and everybody gets the same amount of airtime from a TV coverage perspective. It's not that you get some people putting their hottest lap in you didn't even notice because they want to cut to Max running over a curb weirdly or something. Everybody would go sequentially, and you'd watch their entire lap, and the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one.
I think that'd be brilliant, especially if we could do like a board, where you see the lap times coming on and moving up and down. That'd be tremendous.
I think that would be awesome. Anyway, that is the end of news and social and the dip into the video vault. Although I in my head, I've still got the slap house. I
It's
can
so
hear it.
good. I mean, I'm going to
It
play
is
it
so
out
good.
as we say goodbye to people, just FYI.
Okay, fantastic. So, and rather than saying goodbye to people, we need to say hello to people now because we're going to do our catch up with the fifth wheel guys. Stick with it. It's a little bit jumbled right at the beginning because we realised we've never really done a collaboration episode before. We've always either had guests on or we've guested on the others. This was our first attempt at the two of us coming together to do just kind of like a panel. So I think we both end up welcoming ourselves to each other's podcasts at the beginning. But hey, what the hell? Listening to it, we had great fun.
A lot of fun.
It was awesome.
All right, listeners, we have a very special episode for you this week. Maybe for our longtime listeners, remember last year we did an amazing collab with another podcast, American podcast, The Dirty Side of the Track. I'm here to tell y'all right now, instead of racing, we decided to talk with them this weekend about F1 and the current state of F1 in 2023 and a lot more. So happy to introduce Volume 2, the collab between Dirty Side of the Track and Fifth Wheel. We'll throw those words together. Guys, welcome to the podcast again. How are y'all doing?
Doing really good, thanks. And being this a collaboration episode, I'm going to say no, thank you. Welcome to our podcast.
Oh, okay, there we go. We're just going to out-polite each other the whole
Oh
time.
no, it's really good to get back with you guys again. I can't believe I was looking at the timeline. It's almost a year ago now. We got together in the off-season break last time. This time we're getting together in a kind of sort of off-season weird break. So yeah, it's great to be back. Even pulled Brian along again for the ride this time.
Absolutely. Now, I know we've got quite a few voices on this podcast. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves again so that y'all know who's speaking whenever we do speak. So let's start with the Fifth Wheel guys. Take it away.
I'm Andrew.
All right.
Oh, that's
Brilliant.
it? Okay.
Yeah, a lot of context there. Thanks.
From Fifth Wheel.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, sure, yeah. I am Doug. I'm also from Fifth Wheel, and I am the resident Aston Martin fan on our podcast. And no, I'm not on the bandwagon. I've been a fan since I started watching F1. So Aston, my team, could not be happier this year. But yeah, we'll get into that later, I'm sure.
Okay, wait. Circle back to Andrew on this one. I am resident Red Bull fan, and no, I didn't hop on the bandwagon when they started winning every race. I hopped on the bandwagon when they were winning half of the races in 2021.
Well, that's fun. That's fun. And of course, Dirty Side of the Track, you guys, who we got?
Well, thanks for changing. It's Rob here. I know if we're going to do the teams, and I'm the resident Ferrari fan, and
Nice.
yes, you can all groan at this point. It's fine.
Feel your
So
pain.
with
It's a
with
safe
that, I'm
space.
going to throw it over to the Mercedes boy in the house, Mr. Sat.
Well, I'm broader than that, but yeah, I'm Brian, also known as Sap. I enjoy tires. I enjoy stats and jingles. I love any stats that can be found, used, and talked about. And I'm aspiring to be Sean Kelly, the virtual stat man, one day.
Hey, we'll try and get there one day. One day. One episode at a time. Which, speaking of, now that we've kind of got the introductions out of the way, let's actually talk about some Formula One. With an interesting perspective, all right? So what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the top 5 drivers of 2023 so far from the first few races that we've seen this season. We'll go through and start. We're going to start with number 1 instead of going the other direction because I think when we have these discussions, number 1 is the one that no one's really talking about, guys. So I'm going to count us down. You say who you think number 1 is. 3, 2, 1. Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen.
Okay. That was
Charles
almost...
Leclerc. No, it's Max.
Unfortunately not. It's this guy. I mean, what do you do? Like, he's lined up on track. What do? You know, you can't do anything against the guy. He's one with the machine. He's at his top form right now. He is the clear number 1 driver.
You can't do anything about it. We're in one of those eras, I think, where we've just got the perfect blend of man and machine, best driver in the best car. And you know, if you're the fan of that team and that driver, then it's make hay while the sun shines because you're going to absolutely love it. And when you're on the other side of that coin, you hate it at this point. I'm sure all Mercedes fans absolutely love the Lewis era, and they're struggling to not enjoy, to not really be enjoying this one. You know, it was Schumacher back in the day. It's old as the sport, right? We get these little periods. Sometimes there's some great battles with there's a couple of drivers and a couple of good cars, but I think just right now you just have to take your hat off and applaud and just go, "You're brilliant."
Yeah, that's fair. I guess, I mean, there's not really much to add to that. I mean, that's the bottom line. Max is who he is. He's got Adrian Newey. He's got everybody behind him. And this is probably, Brian, how you felt a few years ago with Mercedes. It must be a tough time.
You know what? I'm all right with it. I'm all right watching it change because I think the regs brought a lot of teams into the midfield and other conversations. And for that, I'm happy.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very, very positive outlook. All right, you
Wow,
might be the
yeah.
most positive Mercedes fan in the world right now.
Oh, I love everybody.
We can tell you don't spend a lot of time on Twitter.
I do, and I just ignore it. I have a very strong defense mechanism.
A lot of muted accounts. I hear you there. Well, let's go ahead and take this to the second driver. So the second best driver in 2023. Maybe we just count down again, and I don't expect us to agree this time. But let's see what happens. 3, 2, 1. Charles
Fernando.
Fernando Alonso.
Actually, you're right. Fernando Alonso. I take my
Easy.
vote back. He's
How
been
many
doing.
Fernando Alonso's did we get there? So everybody put their hand up just on here on the video.
I
So we
think
got-
all of y'all. I said
Everybody-
Charles out of just habit, but you are absolutely right. Fernando Alonso. I mean, come on, Doug. I mean, say some words about your man. Over
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
Oh, I mean, this dude, what we talked about, I think, on our last episode, that his brain sort of got reset and he's driving like he's 18 years old again. He really is. Like, this dude is driving, pardon my pun, but lights out pretty much. It's unbelievable what he's been able to do, especially in this Aston Martin. And speaking of Aston Martin, even Lance Stroll is putting together a pretty decent
please.
season as well. So it's not, I have to name
Uh-huh.
drop Lance Stroll in there, but yeah, it's incredible what he's doing. I don't think anybody expected at the beginning of this year to see, a near 40-year-old doing this on the track against, 20-year-olds in what we thought was going to be better equipment. But apparently, Aston Martin putting together one hell of a run this year.
Well, and can I
So
ask,
just-
Doug, wait, I'm sorry, I have a follow-up to that.
Yeah.
So Fernando had done a great job becoming, and I agree, right? He was my second as well, but he's become sort of everybody's darling, and people love him now. And he's got this positive mojo. The car is great, and Lance hit me, and it's okay, and I'm loving everybody. But, like, that is not the Fernando we got to
No.
know and love. He leaves teams on fire. I mean, just
Absolutely.
look to last year and look to McLaren and look at all the things he's done over his career. He's a great driver. But what happened? Like, what has changed in Fernando that has turned him into a lovable, huggable teddy bear this year?
I do not know. It doesn't make any sense. Like, when this transition was announced, I guess sort of at the break last year, everybody was like, "Oh man, he's gonna go in there and destroy the team."
Me
He
included.
doesn't work well with anybody. I mean, I can't say that I wasn't feeling that same way as well. I was hopeful. Certainly, I was hopeful, but I never expected this. But yeah, I mean, he's on TikTok now. He's funny. He is more funny than people like my age, our age on TikTok. Like, it's crazy. He's out there. He's just vibing. Ultimate no thoughts, just vibes guy right now. Like, just out there doing what he wants. The team loves him. They chant his name every time he ends. He's standing up there on the podium. They're all chanting Fernando Alonso. Like, it's unbelievable. I don't know what happened. I don't think anybody does, but I can't complain. Like, no, you can't complain. It's amazing.
So to keep the pace going here, and maybe about to make Doug my best friend, but what's everyone got there as their number threes? Okay, in 3, 2, 1.
Lewis
Lance
Hamilton.
George Russell.
Fair.
Wait, what?
No one agrees. Okay.
So I'm going to hit.
Wait,
I threw.
Yeah, we have to start with Rob. Can we please start with Rob?
Absolutely. So, and I've said this on a previous episode that I'm eating huge spoonfuls of humble pie here on this guy because I wrote him off as a complete paid driver, daddy's boy, only gets to drive it, got no skill, terrible driver, doesn't belong
Wait,
in
you said
Formula
Lance
One.
Stroll?
Yes, he
Yes.
Both of you said Lance Stroll. That's ridiculous.
No, I said Lewis Hamilton. I think we may have to stop the Dirty Side podcast.
I think we need
This
to
guy-
renegotiate. Y'all
Just
two
dissolve
can
it
go on
later.
your own podcast because this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
Third
that's-
best
Other than his
driver.
DNF, this guy has absolutely impressed me this year in a similar machinery. If he'd have been down the bottom of the grid and Fernando had been rocking it up at the top, everybody would have carried on the narrative that his dad is driver and he's got no skill. This guy put it where it shouldn't have been in the first race with broken hands, and he had a mechanical failure, I think, in race 2, and in race 3 has gone and dropped it high up in the points again, and really putting that Aston Martin and playing a great great wingman to Alonso at the moment. Everyone else at the moment for me is actually underperforming. So I'm only doing this on the 2023 3 races. He doesn't come near my top 5 if we're looking further back than this. But yeah, there we go. Go on.
Well, Rob,
Hand me down. Go for it.
Hold on. I was going to not play many sounds because there's so many of us, but I have one for you with Lance at third. That's terrible.
There's no way y'all actually believe this. Like, this is a grid with people like George Russell, like Lewis Hamilton, like Charles Leclerc, who have done well these races. I mean, Charles Leclerc's tough because his car doesn't work half the time, or 2/3 of the time. But, like, still, like, I mean, are we going to discount George Russell? Are we going to discount, like, these drivers that have been putting it to, like, their older teammates, like George Russell? Or
Stroll's ahead of Russell in the points.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's the
Stroll's
car.
behind Hamilton. As I said, I voted Hamilton third. He has twice as many points as Lance Stroll, almost exactly. He's the top Mercedes driver. He's the top of his team. He's not the second driver on his team like Lance is. He's got more points. He's top of his team. And he's been on a podium. And, oh, by the way, he's like, a 9-time world champion.
That doesn't count for 2023. I don't care about history. Don't care about history. I'm judging 3 races.
Okay.
3
So
races.
I gave you stats. He's got 38 points in the drivers' championship to Lance's 20. 20.
Yeah, but for me, Hamilton has fallen behind Alonso now, so I'm disappointed by Hamilton this year. He's not putting that Mercedes where it should be, whereas Stroll has made huge leaps forward. So that's all I'm saying.
That doesn't
For
make
3
any
races.
sense.
It might change in the
I
next
don't know.
3, but...
Most
Hey,
improved
Brian.
does not give me top 3 vibes.
Agreed.
Brian, if you just want to switch with me, I'll take your spot on your podcast. You take mine. I'll talk with Rob about this all day.
Done, Doug. I'm embarrassed. What did you
All
guys
right.
have? I'm sorry I missed some of the other thirds that we heard.
I have
well,
Leclerc. And if we're going
I
to go
also
off
have Leclerc.
points in 2023, I have absolutely no way to defend him.
I have him fourth.
That's a good point.
Andrew, I have him fourth. I think he's a talented driver. So I hear you. I debated
I don't know
third
what
as
to
well.
say.
So
Third is tough without the performance race. So we don't know his race pace yet. So
I'm trying to say like, predictions for the end of the season.
Okay, that's a different ball game. I mean, I'm not going to predict
Yeah,
Stroll.
Andrew,
We
you're just
said
doing something
after
different.
3 races so far, who's our top 5?
No, I like Rob's method. Let's go with that one. Let's go with that one. Lance Stroll is number 3 for sure.
Okay,
no,
number 4
not
driver
for sure,
then.
Doug. No.
we can segue to 4, but just
Yeah.
to be clear to the listeners, 3 is not. We haven't said that it's Lance Stroll. It's just some
No.
people say
Well,
that.
We did.
Whatever.
All right, I'll settle for Hamilton if we have to come to consensus.
Thank you, Andrew.
I would
Hamilton's a
like to
good
point
vote.
out I had George Russell at 3, but we don't have to get into that.
I mean, I debated Russell with his 18 points and Hamilton's 38 points, which is over 2 times as many. And they're in the same car. And, when Russell got his first win last year, there was a lot of debate amongst the dirty side that this kind of opened up his aperture. Now it's less stress. He's got the monkey off his shoulders. We're going to see an unleashed George Russell this year. And I'm a little surprised that he's been, again, it's close. I'm not saying he's far back, but I thought he would actually be ahead of Lewis by this point in terms of points and in terms of finishes.
Okay. So Lewis Hamilton has finished 3 races to George Russell's 2.
Yeah, I mean, the
He
car
did
caught
get screwed
fire,
over.
but I'm assuming it was George's fault, right? I mean, he did something to make that thing explode.
Fair. I'll give you that one.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right.
It's like
let's,
it was Alonso's fault last year that he got launched into the air and was airborne for the entire DRS straight.
Done by Rob's favorite driver,
No, I
Lance
don't
Stroll.
remember
yeah,
who
the
that
number
was.
3 best driver of 2023.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Heard it here.
That may
Some
be
people can't
revisionist
handle the
history
truth.
right there.
What's our 4s then, guys?
Yeah.
Mine's Lewis.
Mine's
I'd-
Lewis.
I had Charles.
I have Charles too.
Yeah, I think it'd be Lewis because I would say Charles before. So one of those 2 drivers. They're doing really well, and I think like if they had a better car, they'd be fighting for the championship right now. Realistically,
For me, it's Leclerc just purely because I know he's not this bad,
Right.
and I know that he can do better, and that's
And
really
that's
it,
what
'cause he
hurts
hasn't
me.
proved it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what hurts me as the Ferrari fan to not be able to put either of them anywhere near my top 5 after 3 races because whether it's the car holding them back, whether it's, I don't know, we were joking about, I think it was the first couple of races, it was like Ferrari were in the witness protection program because we just didn't see their cars during the first couple of races because they were just languishing, I think, in 5th and 6th. They weren't doing any harm to anybody. They weren't scrapping for the podium, nor were they in a ball of flames at the back. They were just in no man's land in the middle of the points. And I don't know, even with Ferrari not being as good as it probably could be. I just think neither of the drivers are covering themselves in glory at the moment, or maybe just pushing it that bit further forward. There's a lot of things broken at my favorite team, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's the most rational I've ever heard a Ferrari fan in my life.
Especially
That's
coming
real rich
after
coming
Lance
from you.
Stroll's number 3.
Yeah.
Now he's rational.
Real rich coming from you, man.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything I could really add to that. So I think we can go on to the 5th driver, and I'm really curious to see what y'all say about this. But 3, 2, 1, 5th driver, best driver on the grid right now is
Valtteri.
Russell.
Sergio Perez.
Lance Stroll.
What? Brian, defend yourself.
Well, see,
Yeah,
Valtteri came on our podcast. So Valtteri. And
So
if
he's
anyone
listening
listening
right
to the Fifth Wheel hasn't heard the episode, go feel free to check it out. DirtySideOfTheTrack.com special episodes. No,
How much does it cost to buy you guys out? I'm just wondering.
he's 11th in the driver standings. I know that he has 4 points. I would say he's only 2 points behind Charles. But anyway, so to me, I think the Ferrari engine has been not as good as we were kind of led to believe in the offseason. I made some bold predictions based on it. If you look at the bottom teams, you've got Haas, Alfa Romeo down towards the bottom in terms of points. Obviously not quite with AlphaTauri or Williams, but would you expect these Ferrari-powered teams to be that low? I wouldn't. And so I look there. I think Joe's a really good driver. Valtteri's doing, I think, at this point so far this year, a little better than he's doing. And so to me, that's the test. So I know I'm out on a limb. You could name people with more points. I went with Valtteri 5.
Valtteri,
Doug, we got to go make our own
18th in
podcast
Saudi
here.
Arabia.
So,
Yeah. I'm in.
sorry, Drew for cutting you off, but I just got absolutely royally kicked in the ass because I decided to not use points, which apparently are the most scientific method, when I didn't pick Lewis but went for Lance. And then you go and throw Valtteri in and decide to say that points don't count when it's you picking your 5th. It's like one rule for one, Brian, one for another.
Yeah, of course. That's how stats work. You turn them to your favor.
That's true.
That's analytics right there.
All right, so sorry.
That
What did you
works.
guys say besides my Valtteri 5th, which went over like a lead balloon? What did you guys have?
I had
Russell.
Lance Stroll for every reason that Rob gave him for 3rd. So
Okay.
I
I'll
can't
stay there.
believe y'all are just not saying Sergio Perez. Like, look, I'm not saying he's the best driver. Obviously, he's number 5 on my
Yeah.
list, and he's below other drivers that are driving worse cars. But like, he won a race. This dude is the only other person to win a race this season, and y'all just no one said his name.
And I love Checo. Like, I'm a Checo
Yeah.
guy. So it was a debate for me with a lot. But I'm totally with you. Like, he's a great 5th. And I think that's low given what he's done. I think people discount him because of the car.
I just don't know. So I go back and forth with him because like the realistic situation is that we don't. What is success for Checo look like realistically? It's not going to be winning a championship. Let's be
No,
real.
You're right.
So
how
for
do
me,
how do we-
oh, sorry, Chinchia, go on, carry on.
No. I'd love to hear what you think and what everyone else thinks because that's a conundrum with Sergio. I just don't know when does his performance tick over to the wow, he's actually the best driver on the grid, or he's actually doing well, or he deserves his seat. You know.
So I'm not going to try and sound like an F1 snob, but I'm probably going to end up sounding like an F1 snob. But he's got this kind of track record, pardon the pun, of only being good on street circuits. And what did he win this year?
street circuit.
He won a street circuit.
It is. So he seems to struggle for some bizarre reason, matching Max or and any other pace hitters when we get to more kind of traditional circuits. So for me, yes, he's in a great car. Yes, he's an absolute phenomenal driver. He's probably been my number 6 on the 3 races this year. But I think he just needs to start doing it on a more regular basis all the way through the season. Now, Red Bull won't care because he's going to be an amazing wingman. He's going to bring in home a lion's share of points. Max will probably disappear off into the distance with the title. And Sergio will be right up there as well to ensure that Red Bull secure it. And it saves any difficult conversations in the Red Bull team about who's the one who's going for the title. So he's kind of perfect for what he is right now. Do you think he wants that? Do you think I'm sure he wants a driver's title, right?
Yeah.
Of course he does. Yeah.
I mean, does anyone want to not win?
Yuki Tsunoda wants to open a restaurant. He did say that once. So that was his life's goal. They asked him, "What is your dream?" He said to open a restaurant. So
I'd like to hear from the Red Bull fan we have. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think?
Question: do you think that with one driver, Red Bull could win the constructors' championship?
Like literally no second car, or like put
Literally one car
Latifi
on
in
the
the
grid.
second seat? Like, what are you saying here?
No, like
Same thing.
I don't know. They'll line up a car on the grid, and then they just like wheel it in the pits. Like they don't even have a driver in it, no number on it.
That's a really like fascinating question, and I'm not going to get into like the math behind it, or as Rob would call it, maths. But
I'll
I get your point. Is there a second team that has their stuff together enough to actually challenge Max winning almost every race and taking the I don't know if there is.
I don't know if there's either. So if you want like a little bit of is this even possible, you can look back to the 2022 constructor standings. Red Bull won with 759 points. Ferrari had 554. Mercedes had 515. And Alpine had 173. So basically, we only had 3 teams in the top. 3 teams right at the top, and then it drops off. Max Verstappen had 454 points. So that gets him 4th place in the constructors, 50 points behind Mercedes, 100 points behind Ferrari. If you put another team in there, if you have Ferrari, Mercedes, and Aston Martin all going for 3rd place and getting up into the podium, those points start getting distributed out, and we think that Max might win maybe even more races this year. So it could be pretty fair.
And this argument for parity in F1 brought to you by Andrew. I agree, man. We were talking about this like a couple weeks ago. Like, did he have enough extra points, ahead of Charles? Could he have also finished, 3rd as well in the drivers?
I don't know. But I think, bringing the discussion back to Perez for a second, though, his wingman, I mean, that man is under a lot of pressure this season. We've said it before. I mean, if you looked at how Australia was from a PR standpoint, Daniel Ricciardo's face was everywhere. And, maybe he knows something we don't or whatever's going on. That's got to sting at least a little bit. I mean, all the promotional videos, Max and Danny were having the time of their lives, and Checo was sitting there like, yeah, I might get replaced by this dude. So that's kind of where the whole discussion comes into with Perez. It's like, what performance does he have to give to Red Bull to secure his position and people don't hate on him? Which I don't know if there is one.
Let me defend Checo a little bit.
Okay.
So you have they have Max Verstappen. I mean, obviously he's the face of F1 right now. Just he's a champion. And then you have Daniel Ricciardo, Australian, speaks great English. I think that is the main thing. They have him on a lot of promotional stuff. We're watching the English broadcast. If you go to Mexico, there is an overwhelming amount of Red Bull, Checo, gear, merch, advertisements. It is ridiculous how much they love Checo. So I think in a lot of, there's like a big Spanish-speaking market that Checo is doing great on the advertising and the sponsorships, but we just don't see that because we don't speak Spanish.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of said we wanted to do some kind of early silly season predictions, and one of the ones we put up there was Danny Rick. Would he come back? And I don't see it, because I don't see that Danny Rick actually comes in and delivers the amount of points that Checo does. The only reason they get rid is if Checo is making noises behind the scenes that he absolutely wants to have what I'll call a Nico Rosberg season, where he's the one that is prioritized. Well, maybe he was prioritized. Nico maybe won it under his own steam, don't know, but you know what I mean, where the so-called number 2 driver comes through and wins the title, right? And if Checo's really making plays for that he wants parity, he wants this, he wants the other, and becomes a bit of a pain for Red Bull, then yeah, maybe they look to swap. But even if they do, I still don't think they bring Danny Rick back in, because I don't think he delivers the points that Checo does.
I mean, I know we're going completely out of order of what we wanted to do, but Rob, you nailed it, because I looked up and down the grid at each driver as we were thinking about this, and I asked myself, would the team be better, or would they consider letting any of them go? And there has to be some kind of replacement, right? You're not just doing this willy-nilly. And I came up with 3 seats in my mind that are actually, warm to any extent. I wouldn't call them hot. And I don't see Danny Rick wanting any of these seats. And you asked about Mick. The seats I came up with was Yuki's. I came up in both Haas seats as potential. And Mick was at Haas. He ain't going back. So, I don't see Mick, unless Mick goes to AlphaTauri, and I don't see Danny Rick wanting to go to those teams. it'll be really curious. I think this, here's my prediction. I think this will be the quietest, and I know it's already biting me in the butt as I'm saying it. It's going to be bad. But this will be like the quietest silly season I think we've had in a while.
I think that's really interesting, and I'll tell you why. There's a couple of things. I guess let's just go and talk about silly season because I think it's fun.
Let's do it.
Why not? Let's speculate. So, to your point, Rob, there's a couple of things I would say that maybe challenge it, but I think you're largely correct. Like, I don't really see the argument for putting someone who is less accustomed to your car, like on the track and everything. He's been out for a season by the time we talk about next season. Why you would replace someone who has won a race this season, even if it is a street circuit and is doing the performance he has. So a couple of things. One, Max is dominating Red Bull, the team. Like, the team is formed around him. We know that. And that was a discussion Daniel had before he left Red Bull. He saw what we know now is that he is their golden boy, their golden child. And we also know that he's not always happy with F1, right? Like, he doesn't like a lot of the aspects of how Formula One's run. He's been talking about how he doesn't like the sprint races. He doesn't like a lot of different things. Red Bull want to keep him in the sport, right? And they'll do whatever it takes. We know that he likes Daniel. Now, I don't know if you hire someone just because he's boys with the other driver, but, like, you know, he does like to hang out with him. And so does that translate to kicking a driver out and putting someone else in the seat? Well, like Andrew said, Max did run away with the championship last year and was basically a constructor on his own with the number of points he has. So if their concern isn't really the second driver's performance, it's about keeping your first driver at the team, would you not build a team that he wants?
Okay,
So
I can see that side of the coin as well. Well argued, sir.
Yeah. See, I'm the Daniel Ricciardo fan the world needs. I'm out here giving the last bits of hope we have, the small shreds of hope.
If you're such a big Daniel Ricciardo fan, can you take your beverage and put it in your shoe and drink it from there, please?
Yeah, if I was wearing shoes right now, I have a sock. Does that I don't know if that works, but I'll go grab a shoe later and do it.
Done.
Second thing, to your point, Brian, though, I think I'm silently, like, kind of putting the alarm bells out on Ferrari's drivers because I'm really scared about what happens to them. Leclerc's contract's up this year. He's not happy. That dude's really unhappy. And, like, I know, Vasseur just got into, Ferrari, so we don't know what changes are going to happen. And I don't know if he would leave because I don't know where he would go. You'd have to have a Mercedes seat open for him to leave. But, like, it still does scare me a little bit about stability over at that Italian team because I know that they're going through the ringer right now. And I know we're going to talk about teams in a little bit, and we'll talk about upgrades and see what happens when we get to Baku, the next race. I know a lot of the teams are preparing upgrades, so we'll see how that influences things. But I could see a quiet one, but I could also see some chaos depending on what those guys are thinking over at Ferrari.
It just feels to me like with Fred coming in, as you said, and they haven't had the best start. I don't know where those guys would go, Carlos or Charles. That's a better drive. And so just to me, it feels like they'll be there. Lance isn't going anywhere. It's his dad's team. Fernando Alonso isn't going anywhere either. It's his dad's team. He's the adopted son. And so, I don't see any changes. I get the point on the Checo. I do. And as a Checo fan, it hurts me every time people say that he may not be there for whatever reason. I think he's doing a great job as a wingman.
Not performance related, yeah.
Yeah. And so, if Max's mom wants to go out there and talk about Checo's supposed affairs in Monaco, then, all right, there's beef there. But to me, it just feels like you look at all these teams. I mean, Alpine's not changing anybody. They just put this together. They love the all-French team. I mean, you can go up and down the grid, and it feels to me like you have a lot of parity. So, again, I'm probably going to be wrong. I'm the opposite of what happened last year when Marcus Ericsson was basically predicted all of this. So we'll see if I got any of it right. But
yeah, and to kind of, because it was my fault for jumping ahead, but we can save this. We can back into those other subjects the other way around here. So if we think silly season is going to be quiet,
yeah.
Do we see any power shifts in the other teams? Because one of the other things we wanted to talk about was traditional number one drivers. Do they get overthrown by their number twos? And the kind of couple we'd thrown out were like, does Zhou outscore Bottas this year? Does George outscore Lewis? But actually, just thinking about it, as we've been chatting about all of this as well, kind of really interesting. It'll also hook into our discussion around the rookies is what's going to go on at McLaren. So anybody want to sort of start picking the bones out of Lando and Piastri?
I think they're both good. I think their team's bad.
That's a very kind way to put it. I think I'd be a vulture if I went after McLaren. So, Doug, you can say some words about your rival team, former rival team, I guess, now that y'all are at second place. But
Yeah, I don't really think about them too much anymore. We're at the top now. No, I agree with Andrew. I like both of those guys, but I really like Oscar Piastri. I think he has done a very good job this year in a car that we have made a lot of fun of, and potentially not very like rightfully either. They are what? They're currently fourth in the or fifth in the championship
Fifth.
right now, ahead of Alpine. Yeah, so we gave them a lot of trash talk at the beginning of this year, saying they are terrible. They basically just brought back the same car from the year prior. They're racing this year with a rookie and a driver in Lando who really hasn't proven up or really like lived up to the hype that he got when he joined. But I think like as far as McLaren is concerned, they are probably doing better than they had thought right now. And Oscar definitely has proven he's made it to Q3 two times now, I think. He's done a good job. And I think they're probably saying to themselves like, "Oh, we're actually in a little bit of a better spot right now than we thought we might be in at this point in the season." Granted, only 3 races in, but still, Oscar's looking good, Lando's looking good, and the car does not look absolutely god awful like I thought it did, and like I know Andrew and Achintia thought it did too.
do you think?
Yeah, I
Sorry,
think
go
it
on,
looks
Brian.
bad.
You better say something.
I'm chomping here. So I think McLaren is lucky to be fifth. Alpine took each other out, right, in Australia, and they're only 4 points ahead. So like that was a big swing in the 3-race season so far. McLaren, my understanding is Lando's still filling up the air from the first race. He's on pit stop 47 at this point. The McLaren has looked, I think it's looked bad, honestly, and I think Oscar is great. We all agree. I think it sounds like we're all very impressed with Oscar so far.
Yes.
But Lando is, honestly, I'd put him in sort of one of those top 5 generational type driver talents. It's being wasted in my mind at McLaren. If you go back to 2021 Sochi and the rain doesn't come and he wins that race, that could be like the sliding doors movie thing, where like all of a sudden Lando's what thought would happen to George happens to him, and maybe he gets that unlock and he turns into the guy I think he can be. So
Yeah.
you're looking at rookies. I like Oscar, but I think he finishes behind Lando. Logan has proven me wrong.
Sorry, before you go to the rookie conversation, Brian, because I just want to put a bow on this McLaren thing as well, right? So I think Lando. I hate to say this, I think Lando is done unless he gets his act together, because there was an article by Mark Webber about Danny Ricciardo and said that he had all the talent in the world. He was in a Red Bull team and then he got too distracted by all the other things that go on in F1, and he didn't put the time in to put the performances on the track. And he slowly declined, and now he doesn't have any other seat. Lando is getting hit with the same criticism at the moment. He's everywhere. He's loving all the non-F1 stuff, whether it's the gaming, whether it's being on social media, and he just seems to be distracted by this other stuff. Now, if he's feeling a bit down in the dumps because the car's not where he wants it to be, because he must know, like you say, he was a rain shower away from a win, right? If he doesn't actually kind of really knuckle down, I can see Piastri beating him this year. Because Piastri's the new young kid on the block that wants this, and I don't know that you feel the same passion right now from Lando that he really wants it in the way that he used to. I don't know the guy. I could be way off base here. I just don't see Lando's on the rise at the moment.
I think this, Rob. Like looking at the situation, I kind of agree with you to a point. I think he's done, but I think he's done with McLaren. I don't think he's done with racing. I don't think he's done. I think you're right that maybe this is just a McLaren problem. They have a very toxic situation because they've burned through driver after driver. Like, lest we forget, a few years ago, Fernando Alonso was on that team. And look at where he is now. So, like, drivers' performance during McLaren recent years, I don't know what to make of it, really. But to your point, though, I have kind of a conspiracy theory, kind of going back to that silly season discussion we were having. I think Lando is also thinking long-term, right? That was why he signed with McLaren in the first place. He thought that there was a future coming in for where they were going. With the direction they were traveling, and obviously it's not fulfilled. I think he's now seeing Andreas Seidel, who's left McLaren, go over to what's going to be Audi, and realize, whoa, those guys are going to be making their own engines, and they've got Andreas Seidel, who apparently everyone at McLaren loved, even though he kind of delivered them a bad car. But yeah, whatever. They like Andreas Seidel. They like the engine. They like a potential for a reshuffle in 2026 when the new engine regulations come in. Maybe he's going to take the plunge and try and go over to what's currently Alfa Romeo. and kind of submit himself into that team, kind of supplant himself in there, get to know everyone, and then 2026, it's lights out and he's away with the championship. That's my
I like
that's yeah,
Sold.
That's just me. That's just me. I don't know.
I think that's
Yeah,
a
I'd sign up for that season.
Yeah, that is a tinfoil hat I'd like to get a
Yeah.
copy of and wear myself.
I'll send you some over. But
I'm serious. I mean, I'm
yeah.
joking, but I'm not. I think that's a great perspective. I actually have been secretly wondering if Lando's trying to get to Red Bull because he's tight with Max.
Yeah.
And if there were a way he could be the second chair there, I don't think he knows what he's getting into, being second to Max, but driving with a friend, I think is something he'd want to do. But I like the Audi aspect a lot.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big potential. And to your point too, Rob, what you were saying and what we were discussing too, if Piastri beats him at the end of the season, I see him trying to make that move more quickly, right? Because he doesn't want people to think his stock is dropping considerably. Because if he is beaten by Piastri this year, at the end of the season, he can still say it was a bad car. Like, look at all the years where I beat Daniel, where I beat, or I was with Carlos Sainz, in performance. And so his stock is still there. Now, if he waits a couple of years and he loses to Piastri again next season, then maybe the Audi deal doesn't work. But yeah, that's maybe a scenario I see when I hear about Lando in the future.
Sorry, Brian, I
That's the
cut
best
you off
for
when
him.
you were launching off into rookie world.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the short version, and then I'll stop, and you guys can all weigh in on rookies. We talked a lot about Piastri. I think Sargent's doing a fine job at Williams. I'm a big Albon fan, so I know, sorry, and so like to me, Sargent's doing all right. He's qualifying okay, and his race pace, he's a couple spots behind Alex most of the time. Fine and good. And Nick though, AlphaTauri is a mess, and I'm waiting for De Vries to just show Yuki what's going on, but I don't know if if either of them know how to drive those trash cans, and that's called AlphaTauri. It's just a mess. What is going on there?
Yeah.
Drew,
So,
you were violent.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Tina, but Drew, you were violently shaking your head with the sergeant stuff there. We've got to hear what you want to say there.
We want to cheer for him. I said last episode that if he doesn't do better, that he's from Florida, which is barely the U.S. So
I lived in
perfectly
Florida a
fine to
long
disown
time.
him.
Well,
Yeah,
that's when you're
he's on
not
thin
a
ice
citizen.
for me.
Well, what does he have to do there? Because if you think about it, right, that Williams car isn't good, and
Yeah,
he's
it's
come
bad.
in and he's obviously been not a Latifi, so he has been hanging around
Right.
point scoring positions, but not quite converted. I think it's only him and De Vries at the moment are the only two non-point scorers on the
Yep.
in
That's right.
the titles this year, right?
Yep.
Albon's only got 1 point. So he's not getting disgraced. Like I say, he's not Latifiing the season so far. So I don't know. I think he's been a bit
Sargent's
harsh
only
on the
1
boy
point
Logan
behind
there.
Albon. He's 1 point behind Albon. That's
Yeah,
not so
yeah.
bad. It's all the points, but still.
Yeah, I think so. To your point, first of all, Brian, I think I may have sniffed a little bit or breathed some air out when he said Albon. I have no problems with Albon. Me and Albon were friends. All right, so just to be very clear,
Okay, I was
you
just
can be an
making
Albon
sure.
fan. That's fine. But what Andrew said was very true, and just to like kind of remember, like the first race, I want to say he was off the points by like 1 or 2 places. I think he finished like 11th or 12th, and that's a big deal. And that's something we've also discussed too when we talk about rookies. Like, how do we grade performance? Like, for instance, Joe Guan Yu, his first race last year in Alfa Romeo, he got points.
Yeah.
And that's a big indicator, I feel like, of whether or not someone's going to be a good driver. If they get points in a debut season, that's a good sign,
Yeah.
right? But obviously, we can't say that for Nick De Vries. But what can we say with that terrible car that he's in? That team is just falling apart left and right. Yuki Tsunoda is a bright spot on that team. Like, he's got it into the points a couple of times. So, I guess I want to just kind of ask in general to everyone, like, how do y'all look at a rookie and say he's decent or he's good or he has potential versus he's terrible? And it is early to even tell right now, but what are you looking at?
Well, I'll say this. It's definitely tougher this year. And I think it's for one really odd reason in that we don't have a Latifi and we don't know who the worst driver on the grid is. So there's really not like a clear cut comparison to say, yep, I'm better than this guy. That I deserve a seat on the grid, right? And we can't say that. We don't know currently who is the worst driver. We could say, yeah, it's De Vries, or maybe you could argue Sonoda, or maybe even Logan Sargent, right? But there is nothing saying clearly like you're the worst driver right now. Like if Sargent came in and was doing worse than Latifi was, for sure,
Right.
gone. Cut him, gone, done. Never even pretend it never even existed. But we can't. There's nothing. So if Sargent goes on to maybe score a couple points, De Vries maybe scores a couple points, who knows? You can't. There's really no easy way to make that comparison this year or make a decision this year. Like, yep, he was successful or he wasn't, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always about, I guess the only real thing you can do is compare yourself to your teammate because they're in the same machinery as you, right? So there's two angles for me: your teammate, and then if you can drag a bag of bolts around a track and maybe make it finish higher up the field than it maybe deserves to in terms of raw pace of a car. So Piastri is doing well. He's not matching. He's got half the points of Lando, but he's still got 4 points. But he probably should be higher up because the McLaren is better than the Williams and the AlphaTauri. So you can't really compare directly the three rookies because they're not in like for like machinery. And even though Sargent's got no points and De Vries has got no points, I still rank Sargent's no points much better than De Vries's no points, which is a stupid thing to say. But Sargent just seems to be like we've said, he's got through, I think, into qualifying later stages. He hasn't bombed out and dropped out of Q1 in every single session, and more importantly, he hasn't been 20th in every single session and been like 6 seconds off making it through. So. Yeah, it is a difficult one. There isn't that yardstick at the other end. You're not going to compare him to Max and work out what his delta is to Max. You needed that Latifi to go, well, at least he's a couple of seconds quicker than Latifi. So, sorry, Latifi. I know you're a big fan of both shows. I agree with you, Doug. It's difficult, and I think 3 races is too much. All I think we can say is all 3 rookies have not embarrassed themselves in any way, shape, or form in 3 races so far. But it's a long season, so we have to wait, I guess.
But so I think that's a great point Doug makes. Because if you're a team principal and the field is closer than it's ever been and your drivers, your rookies, are not embarrassing you, they are showing out pretty well so far. Again, not where you'd want them to be, but your team isn't where you want them to be. Williams and AlphaTauri that's not where they want to be. And so they look and they say, you know what, we've got productive drivers. That goes back to my earlier comment why I don't think it's going to be a crazy, silly season, because you're not writing off a Latifi. And you're not saying, you know what, he's not ready. We definitely have a seat here. I feel as though you're going to see a lot of people giving drivers another chance next year. And just to say, well, we didn't learn enough this season because everyone was so close and no one was terrible. Maybe we see a lot of people running it back. That's sort of the genesis of why I think there's not as big a silly season. But I like your argument that there's not a yardstick at the rear either. So it's a good way to think about it, Doug.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, Brian, to your point, this is a great transition into a broader discussion about teams in general. So like you were saying, team principals are looking at the grid and all the drivers, all the cars are relatively close. And as it actually came out, I think some people were saying on Twitter too, this season is one of the closest seasons we've had in F1 in recent history. If you look at pace performance between the slowest car on the grid or the last car on the grid, and even the Red Bull car, like I know the Red Bull is very fast, but the gap between a first and last place person is a lot closer than it was last year. And so I think we can kind of break this discussion down. Let's talk about maybe the big hitters, the big names, and go from there. Starting with, I think we've said a lot about Red Bull. I don't really know what else to add, except for maybe a slight hot take, which is that I'm not sure they're going to completely run away with this championship just because.
They will.
Wow. Couldn't even get a reason out. And Andrew Miramon coming from the ropes. To my point, I'm curious how that penalty is going to hit him, though, the CFD performance penalty, because I don't know if it's going to change their second half of the season development or if they're just going to say, you know what, we're just going to focus on the next season entirely, and it'll be close at the end of the season, maybe between Max and Fernando or whoever, or Max and Leclerc or whoever. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying it's 100% lock, but it's like a 80% lock, I feel like, at this point.
So Rob and I have had an ongoing debate. I'd like the 3 of you to please weigh in because it's a mix of what you two just said. I think that by 2026, or I guess the end of 25, there will be another team that challenges Red Bull for the Constructors' Championship. Rob does not. He thinks they will. This is the era of domination that we saw from Mercedes and other teams, and that by 2025, Red Bull will have won the constructor. Whatever it is, 4 years on the run. So, I would like you guys' thoughts. Will somebody challenge by the end of 25? It could be, and you're saying this year. I'm just broadening the lens a little bit out to say, will somebody bring it to Red Bull by the end of 25. I vote yes. Rob votes no. You guys are welcome to align with a Lance Stroll lover or me.
Is this so? Are we?
I
saying
would like to
brings
align to the
challenge?
Lance Stroll lover. I would like to align.
So you're saying, Doug, you're saying Red Bull walks off with the constructor in 23, 24, and 25.
Oh wait, no. I want to misalign. I misaligned to that.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right. So you're bailing on
Sorry.
Rob.
So-
You're bailing
so-
on
whoa,
Rob.
whoa, whoa.
For this
Hang
one
on a
I am,
second. In any courtroom, both sides get to put their arguments forward. So
That's fair.
Brian's
That's
put
fair.
his out. Let me just my reasoning is just because anytime I hear a counter to this of but Aston are going to develop and Ferrari are going to develop and Merc are going to develop and they're all going to close the gap, that kind of almost alludes to the fact that you base that argument on, well, then Red Bull will stand still. I do not believe that Newey has got the most out of that car yet, and they've totally maxed out on the new regulations. So for every piece that Aston, Merc, and Ferrari pull back, they might get closer to Red Bull, and it might not be as walk in the park as it was last year. I just see the next 3 seasons being Red Bull, and I do believe that people will get closer and closer and closer. I just don't see we go into, like I say, a last 3 or 4 races where it's still up for grabs. I see Red Bull locking out the constructors, and I didn't mean drivers, so it's not drivers. I didn't say that. This is a constructors thing.
Right.
I think we're in a Red Bull era, and the next chance for the big shakeup is the 2026 regs. And again, you can still not agree with me, but that's my case, Your Honor.
Interesting.
Rob, I agree with you.
Yes, Andrew.
The Red Bull fan agrees with Red Bull dominance. No, wait. Okay, wait. Rob, can I ask a question? Follow up on what you just said. So you gave a stipulation. You said that constructors, not necessarily drivers. So are you saying that someone outside of Red Bull is going to challenge for the driver championship?
You might see a situation where, I don't know, let's say Ferrari get their act together and for some reason they're able to put all their efforts behind Charles and Charles can chase down Max to some degree. But Sainz, as a team, they don't score enough points continually to be able to, because especially as we're probably going to get onto in a minute, with the rest of the field now all bunching up, I actually think one of the other things that plays into Red Bull's strengths is that because now Aston have gone and thrown a cat amongst the pigeons and points are going to get shared out more across Aston, Merc and Ferrari as they all move forward, Red Bull are going to carry on continuing to get the big points. The other 3 are going to take points off each other. I actually think they start getting more occupied with each other rather than Red Bull in the short term to try to be the best of the rest. And I think that lays itself into Red Bull winning it again.
Nope.
That's a really good point.
The loss of the CFD time, there's only so much you can wring out of the car. The other teams have more opportunity to do so. I think you're going to see Charles and Carlos tag teaming and getting up there and taking points off. Checo, you're going to see maybe not this year. Again, give me some time. But Mercedes ain't going to rest. They're building a whole second car, supposedly. I mean, I just can't wait to see next year and the year after someone, and we're not arguing Max. I actually think Max wins a few in a row here. But I think someone brings it to Red Bull.
I would like to point out quickly that Aston Martin, first of all, the fact that Aston Martin's even been mentioned in the top 3 names of the sport is absolutely mind-blowing to me. Who never thought we would be here, but we are, which is crazy. And I don't think that we can overlook the fact that Aston Martin has made this massive jump this year from the year prior. Potentially one of the biggest leaps in the sports. Well, I'm not going to say that because we're definitely going to get called out on Instagram for it. But they've made a massive leap, right? We already get enough hate comments as it is. But they've made a massive leap this year, and there's nothing saying that they can't do it again, especially with the fact that they are getting a brand new factory that will be live next year. They will have the most modern, the most technologically advanced wind tunnel in the entire sport, and they will be using that to develop a new car for the next season. They also have a ton of money with Lawrence Stroll, and Lance Stroll, who Rob can't even disagree with me here, is a good driver. He's a paid driver. Obviously, he's a paid driver. Probably not the most skilled driver on the grid. Definitely not the most skilled driver on the grid, but he's at least decent enough to get you results in a good car. And they have Fernando Alonso, who has reversed his age by 20 years and will probably drive for another 20. So if there's
Benjamin Button of F1.
Right, exactly. If there's any team that has the momentum to catch up to Red Bull right now, I think there is a very strong argument for Aston Martin in this case because Ferrari seems to be fumbling around a little bit. Mercedes doesn't know what they are. Maybe they do. Maybe they have another car in the background, but this car they have on the grid right now isn't really proving too much. They have good drivers, but their tech is maybe lacking. Aston Martin is moving the ticker, every ticker, and in the right direction, it seems. And if they can pull it all together, I think that they could challenge Red Bull in the next few years.
So, in summary, the Red Bull fan in the room completely agrees with me. The Aston Martin fan in the room completely agrees that Aston Martin are next constructor champions.
Yes.
Shock horror.
Yeah, and I guess as a Ferrari fan, I'll tell you that I don't know how much hope we have as is, so we'll just see what happens. I'm going to hedge my bets. I don't know. I mean, I do want to talk about Ferrari for a second because I think it's worth a conversation. I think this might be our darkest hour. Like, I feel like things can only get better from here because it's really bad, and I don't know how much worse it could get, short of us, like, double DNFing, which, knock on wood.
Why'd you have to say that? Why'd you have to tempt fate when we're about to go into race week?
I have here. I'm knocking on left and right. It doesn't matter. It's fate that we will be unhappy somehow. But, I do think the only hope I have is actually coming from Aston Martin. And like you said, Doug, it's like jumping from that. I think they finished, 6th or 7th in the championship last year. It was not very good to where they are today, like challenging for podiums and maybe even wins if Fernando Alonso gets his way. So, like, if a team that is not even spending, I think, to the budget cap can do that, then it goes to show you the power of organizing and being able to use that extra CFD time into something. And maybe back-to-back seasons of Ferrari having that extra time and maybe figuring out reliability might be what it takes, along with some good management from Vasseur. So that's the only hope I can see. Now, if that comes to fruition by the end of this year, it's tough to say. Come to fruition by 2026, I like it a little bit more, but I'm still a little wobbly on it if I'm gonna be honest here. So I don't know. Y'all really lucked out with that Red Bull engine freeze, though. I'll tell you that much. The development freeze that y'all have, crazy how much it helps y'all.
Talking of development, then, so we're going to have allegedly some upgrades coming in some races. If we kind of look at the rest of 2023, both Baku and beyond, 2 questions to everyone. One, who do we think at the moment, the current best of the rest fight brings the most out of Aston, Merc and Ferrari to kind of see if they can A, be the best of the rest and B, maybe go after Red Bull? Second question is, does anybody from the rest of the pack bring anything that brings them into the equation of best of the rest? And Andrew, you've been a little quiet, so let's kick that one off with you.
Yeah. Aston's got it. I think Aston's got it. And but I do think Aston and Mercedes will be definitely fighting for the rest of the season. I really don't know with Ferrari. We might see, I'm tempted to say that we'll see the exact same as last year, where they're just horrifically unreliable and honestly not that good. So,
Wrong.
yeah.
Stabbing me in the...
And then I don't see any hope for the rest of the field, really. McLaren, I mean, possibly. Alpine, Haas, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Williams. No, I don't see any hope down there.
So you're the ray of sunshine optimist on the fifth wheel, then, basically, is what I'm summarizing from this.
Always, yeah.
All I'm saying is it's all sunshine and rainbows up here. With this, if you just support Max Verstappen and Red Bull, you have no worries.
Oh man. What about you, Achinta? If we take off, if we throw Andrew's Red Bull glasses into the bin and let you have your say.
Yeah, I'll put the sensible glasses
Ferrari,
on.
Please.
I will. I can and I will. So there's something very important that I don't know if we've been discussing. This hasn't been a break in F1. Like the factories are still open. They're still doing development work. George Russell's supposedly, and this is the rumor mill from Twitter, so this is the same people that gave you that Taylor Swift and Fernando Alonso are dating. So that's it.
So funny.
That might explain why he's doing so well recently. I don't know. Things are going well for him. Also, personality-wise, leaving exes behind with like burning bridges and everything, like those two got it. Anyways, that's a separate topic entirely. We can do that later. But coming back to the fact that all of those engineers, all those people in those factories have been working extra hard. They've had the opportunity to analyze data from 3 races, a street circuit, and 2 other circuits as well. And they have time to build those components and ship them to Baku, which is going to be next weekend. So I actually think we're going to see a lot. I think Mercedes are going to come to the table, and I think Ferrari are going to come to the table because both those teams have something to prove. Aston Martin, they're doing well. If they finish off the podium this next week, it's fine. No one's going to say like they've fallen a step back. We're just going to say, you know, those teams came forward because realistically, that's what happened. And I do think that those engineers at Mercedes and Ferrari are being told, you know, hey, like this is not okay. We cannot be slipping further back in the championship than we were last year. And I think they're going to be bringing something to the table. So I do think Mercedes and Ferrari are both going to be challenging at least for podiums by the end of the season regularly. Now, does that mean you're going to get the podiums? Not necessarily, because Aston Martin is still a potent force for that third place or that second spot on the podium. And of course, Red Bull's there too, taking away your first and second position if Perez is up there. So I'm not saying that they're going to come up and win races, but podiums, yeah, sure. Give me Mercedes and Ferrari. I think they're going to be doing something.
Yep.
Brian?
I'll say really briefly.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Doug.
Oh, no, yeah. I was just going to say, like, really quickly, I completely agree. If there's one thing I've been worried about with Aston Martin this season, it's the rate of development as we progress. And there's no way Mercedes and Ferrari are going to get complacent with this car. Mercedes, you know, they're a technical force. They're coming with something strong for sure. And there's no way Ferrari is going to sit there and be happy where they're at. So, yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah.
So,
Wait. So, Doug, are you assuming that Ferrari developing will make the car better?
No, I didn't say that it would be better. It will change. It will change for sure, but maybe not.
Kind of worse.
I mean, I
Sorry,
think
Rob. Sorry, Ace.
I think you can just go right to the end. In my mind, the end of 23 sees the following order. I'll just chop it up straight. It's Red Bull first. I see Mercedes second. They came on strong last year. They developed their way into contention at the end of the season. They're going to do it again. And so I see Ferrari third. Sorry, Doug. Aston Martin I see drop into fourth. They have the Haas effect. Haas came out on fire last season and had no more developments. They'd shot their shot. Lack of a better term that I was going to use. And so now
that's a bit mean on Aston. That is.
Hold on. I'm not saying they're
in the
not
Haas category.
Well, no. Hold on. No. I'm not saying in terms
Martin.
of placement in the championship. I'm saying their car came in great, and there wasn't a lot of extra development that they could put on top of it. That's my perspective for Aston dropping to fourth. And I think Alpine is the team to watch in the midfield. The car's slippery. Pierre's new. I think they're going to figure it out. They took each other out in Australia. If they don't do that, they're already fifth. I think they'll be a solid fifth ahead of McLaren. So, anyway.
That's fair.
I think that's a good way to kind of, because we're probably coming up towards the end of our conversation. That's a great way to kind of round it out as to what everybody sees the end. So I'm going to agree with your order, other than one little switcheroo, just to make Doug happy. But I actually believe it. I don't know. I can see Ferrari developing their way back into this one. I think this is almost a learning season for Fred and the gang to work out what the hell needs putting right. So I think Aston could tip Ferrari. So I think Red Bull, Mercedes, I agree with. But then I think Aston, Ferrari, who's the best of the rest that breaks out of that one? I'm going to say...
You can join me with Alpine?
I think I am. I hate to agree with you. This is awful.
I think Alpine, we shouldn't be sleeping on them. They showed quite a lot of pace in that last race.
Yeah,
and
I think
they would have been well into the top 10 had they not taken each other out. So, we can't discount them quite yet.
I think
it's okay. That last lap didn't count. It was a work of your imagination. So, oh no! You can't just unexplode cars, can you?
No, I think to your point, actually, Doug. Well, I was going to say this too. Pierre Gasly was holding off Lance Stroll in that race in an Alpine, and of course, Lance was in the Aston. Your third best driver, by the way. But here was Pierre Gasly in that French car, holding him off. And so I think you're right. That pace, that Alpine, it's really interesting to see what they can do. I'm not saying top tier, but I'm saying, the top half of the points, they could start looking, in that direction.
I would love to see it. I think I could be way off, and we all may be way off, but it's a team to watch, I think.
What's your top five, Doug?
My top five. Oh, man. Yeah, I think I have to agree with you. Honestly, I think I might put Mercedes at 2 and then Alonso and Aston Martin at 3. I just don't know about Ferrari, and then Alpine at 5. But it could be like any, because like we're saying this now, we're only 3 races in. It could completely shake up, and maybe Alpine's at 3. Who knows? Like they look good. You can't deny it. They look decent in that last race, and I don't know if their engineering team is up to snuff. Look, who knows? This season's already been crazy. Nobody expected Aston Martin to come in and get third and second places this year. So who knows?
It's a good shout, actually, because of that double DNF, and that massively skews. But like you say, we're just 3 races in, so 1 double DNF, and you're completely destroyed in the points total. It will be interesting to see where they go. So let's see where Happiness and Sunshine Andrew is seeing the top 5 spread out. You can't say Red Bull in all 5 slots, okay? That's just a rule.
Red Bull, I got faith in Aston Martin. I really do. Aston Martin, and then Mercedes, and then I have 0 faith in Ferrari.
Yeah.
And I have a little bit of faith in McLaren. I have to say it.
Nothing wrong with that.
What?
I think there's going to be a massive, massive drop off after Ferrari in 4th, and then I think we'll see some decent parity there coming down to the last couple of races. Alpine, McLaren, maybe Haas. I don't know. Hulkenberg's been pretty good.
You're
Hulkenberg
just
has looked
saying
good.
words now.
Yes,
You're just saying teams like Manchester City. Like I could do it too. Like, come on, Haas,
and then the
bro.
Cowboys at the end.
Yeah, better chance of Ferrari.
Oh, and that's just unfortunately true, isn't it? The Cowboys have got more chance of winning the constructors' title this year than Ferrari. Oh.
They're the same, one and the same, anyways. But I don't know. I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, we will. And like you say, we're going back into race week. So us guys and all the other kind of F1 pods out there don't need to scratch around trying to magic up content to fill this China-shaped hole. We can actually get back to talking about action on track, which is
Absolutely.
why we all started doing this in the first place, right? So I think that's probably the right place to put a bow around it so that we can go and put this one in the locker and get our sights set on Baku next week. So thank you so much for reaching out, guys, and suggesting we do this again. I know it took a little bit longer than we wanted to, and we were actually probably pretty grateful for China for pulling out. So we had a hole in the window to be able to do this. So from dirty side to fifth wheel, just want to thank you guys. It's been great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
I think we've learned a lot. I think there are more thoughts about F1. It's been fantastic.
I am waiting for the end of the season to come around to see where Lance actually ends up, and then someone's going to crop my little 3rd best driver thing out and just make some kind of song about it. But
That'll be me.
Throw Doug in there too. We gotta let y'all know.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Well, enjoy
you.
Baku, guys, and we will definitely try and check in with you again in the future. Maybe some kind of end of season roundup as well. So enjoy the season, guys.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Hey, y'all the
See
same.
y'all there.
Okay, thanks to the Fifth Wheel guys for doing that. And like I said in the episode itself, it took a bit of time to get that lined up. We've been trying to do it for a while, and schedules keep missing. So thanks to China for pulling out. It made some room for us to do that kind of stuff. So yeah, really, really enjoyed chatting with those guys. And one day we'll get all 4 of them on. We seem to be adding an extra one. They have 4 people as part of their podcast. Last year we only had the 2 of the guys on. This year we've upped it to 3. So next time we meet, there'll be all 6 of us on there.
It was amazing, a lot of fun. And now we have a chance to catch up with 100 Seconds of DRS with Lizzie. And I got to say, doing the 100 Seconds of DRS has been amazing. It's fun to meet people, talk F1. We're all fans of F1 and just learn origin stories, how you got in, who you cheer for, how do you watch, what's your deal with F1? And everybody's a little different, and everybody's been amazing. I hang up each of these, Rob, and I'm like, man, I'm so thrilled to be a fan of F1 sitting next to these people. And this time is no different. Lizzie is a fountain of knowledge. She is funny. Her story is great. And it's just a great reminder why F1 is so cool, to hear her kind of tell her story and then tackle the 100 seconds. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
I totally agree. So let's take a listen and listen to Lizzie. All
right, we are super excited to have Lizzie on with us today to talk about her F1 fandom and do the 100 Seconds of DRS. And we were kind of connecting before we clicked the record button. And Rob and I are both embarrassed by our F1 knowledge after having talked with Lizzie a little bit. But she has the same passion we do, and so we love talking to fans. So Lizzie, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So how did you get into F1? Because it's obviously become a passion for you.
I think, like many people my age, I'd say mid-30s, that it was sort of for my family. My dad has watched it from the 60s, My brother was very much into it as well, 2 years older than me. So there was a lot of sibling rivalry going on there, and it was just always on in the house. Scalextric's track in the hallway. Yeah, it's just been part of my life for as long as I can remember.
And you were telling us earlier there was the fact that your brother was a Mansell fan, and you, as a supportive sister, could have maybe joined him in his Mansell supporting choice, but you decided that you would take a little different tact, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what it's like with brothers and sisters. So I decided that I would latch on to the driver that beat Mansell the most. So I sort of segued into becoming an Ayrton Senna fan by osmosis, really.
And I love that because, you know, lots of people obviously gravitate towards Senna, fantastic driver, but you didn't get there because you were a fan of his huge driving skills. You got there because you picked the driver that beat your brother's favourite the most, and I love that.
Yeah, spite.
Yeah. Amazing. But as we were kind of chatting before, despite the fact that even coming in at that level, we're kind of Senna and a Mansell and all the people that were current at that time, actually, when we think about favourite drivers, it's even a little bit further back in time that really kind of floats your boat and really kind of what brought you to come and engage with the dirty side to start with when we did our driver polls. So who's at the top of the shop for Lizzie?
Top of the shop? Well, you know, I could make a case for probably about 12. Yeah, I think I could make probably a decent case for about 12 drivers through history, but I'd have a good stab at it. But Jimmy is top of the tree for me by quite some distance, and I will always go into bat for him on, you know, these silly little poll things.
It was not silly. This was highly scientific, our poll, if that's
Highly
what
scientific.
February F1 fantasticness. And all of a sudden, Lizzie and I are going back and forth in agreement about how amazing Jim Clark is. And some people got on there and tried to make an argument that he wouldn't be good in today's F1 and this and that. And Lizzie basically told them all where to take it. And I'm like, amazing.
I see their point. I do. I think Ron Dennis was always of the opinion that drivers get better through time. And that's a fair enough thing. But I think, generally speaking, the best drivers would always be the best drivers. And it's always going to be opinion-based in the end, because you can never know. You can't ever know, because you can't be fair to all the drivers. You can't race them against each other, and you can't put them all in a car that would suit them. And I think even more than that, you can't give a fair crack of the whip to the drivers that had talent but never got the car. So I think it's always going to be it's an entertaining debate, but a futile one in the end.
I mean, especially Jim Clark's 65 season. He raced all over the globe, everywhere, and won everything. I mean, like, I don't understand how people don't see his broad talent beyond just F1. But
but I think most people don't know about it. I think that's the problem.
They should go listen to our Vales Tales about it. What do you think?
They absolutely should. And I think versatility-wise, he would get in anything and be competitive in anything. I mean, he won the Tasman Championship. I think he came third in the Touring Car Championship that year. But he'd won it in '64. He won the British F2 Championship, the European F2 Championship, the Indy 500, the F1 World Championship. And that's because, and even missing Monaco to go and run Indy because he couldn't do both. Just the way his competitors at the time talked about him, you couldn't imagine that today. You know, Jack Brabham literally gave an interview and said he's too fast and there's nothing I can do about it.
And I think, and I think that's the great equalizer, is that, like you say, you're never going to be able to compare him that drove around almost like with a bathtub with an engine in it versus the highly technical era that we've got now. So trying to compare, say, a Lewis or a Max to to him is it's just like you say, it's just impossible, because how you can't prove it. No one's got a DeLorean where we can go back in time and compare it all together, but you can look at what the people of the same era thought about that one person. So every now and again there is a driver that everyone else on the grid just looks at and went, that person's amazing. You know, all of Senna's peers said the same thing. Jim Clark's peers all say the same thing, and I think that's probably one of the things that you can kind of put some credence to, is like, what did all of their peers think of them at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember John Watson, I think, gave an interview, didn't he, about Senna, saying, I can't do that. You know, he was watching him come through Dingle Dell, and he said that it was like he had 8 feet and 8 hands, you know, and I can't do that. And that's when he started to realize that his time as a Formula One driver was ending. So yeah, it's an impossible task, but one I love the pod debate about it. I really do. You know, I think it's an interesting thing to talk about, and it's interesting to hear the difference of opinions of how people measure it as well.
So, Lizzie, a question about today, a debate that Rob and I are currently having, and this will air as this debate continues.
Yeah.
I am of the mindset that before 26, some constructor, some team will have a shot to get close to Red Bull. I'm not talking drivers, but I'm talking just the Constructors' Championship. Someone will bring some challenge to the title. Rob thinks it's set, 23, 24, 25. Just chalk up Red Bull Constructor and let's move on. I think there'll be someone who could, I don't know who it is yet. It could be Ferrari if they can get their act together, maybe Mercedes. I think it could be Mercedes, Aston Martin. Can they keep this going? Who knows? It's probably not going to be Haas. And so the question to you, Lizzie, is where do you fall on sort of the next handful of years? Will a constructor challenge Red Bull at all?
Oh, I want to sit on the fence and say I don't know, but I'm going to pick a side, and I'm going to go with you, Brian, on the constructors thing, but I ultimately think Verstappen will probably be champion in every single year.
I agree on that as well. I would agree with you there too.
Just because of the way they set their team up. They have a number one, and and that's how they roll, and that's fair enough.
Everybody but Checo knows that.
Quite. Yeah, that's how I see it. I don't necessarily want it to be that way, but I sat through Schumacher domination. I've sat through Hamilton domination. Twas ever thus. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's my view on it is that because Nui is such a genius, and because they're so far ahead, is just that I don't see the problem that the rest of the grid has is that unless one of them really makes a gain, I see that pack of maybe Aston, Ferrari and Mercedes all beating each other and taking points off each other all the time, which means not one of them can actually become the forerunner. So where Red Bull stay there and probably get a little bit better, they don't need to get massively better, but they'll still keep improving over the next couple of years. The others will all just keep tripping over each other, is because, especially with Aston really doing the cat amongst the pigeons now, there's now a third team in there to kind of take points off each other.
Take points off each other.
So I just think if Max you have down as winning the Drivers' Championship every year, I see Checo or maybe Checo's replacement over the next couple of years coming in second enough times to just swing it to a Red Bull each year. But no, that's a bit like the February fantasticness, it's a good debate, and none of us are going to know until we get there. So
I mean, you have a point. I think that you often does lead to every rule change leads to a period of domination, doesn't it? But you always get diminishing returns. I think 2021 was the absolute ultimate acid test of that. So you always, by the end of a set of regs, you always have a convergence. Maybe it won't be this year, maybe it won't be next year, but possibly by 2025, we will have a proper, a ding-dong fight but I ultimately think.
Yeah, Rob, take that. Lizzie and I are waiting for you at the end of 2025 season.
Yeah, we're coming for you.
Give us a
Tortoise
couple
and hair.
years. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I would absolutely be thrilled to be wrong. I'd be thrilled to be wrong this season and have my beloved Ferrari come storming back. But it's a kind of
You're
a
not
heart
wrong.
versus head, and my head is kind of, yeah, I know. But yeah. On that depressing note.
Yeah. Let's pick up the enthusiasm with the 100 seconds of DRS. It is a great opportunity to get to know a fellow fan of F1. And Lizzie, thank you for volunteering to do this. You are unfortunately in the far less capable hands of Rob's question asking today. We flip flop each time, and so it's his turn. So you're gonna have to guide him through this.
Fellow Brit, it's fine.
Yeah, it'll be great. So are you ready, Lizzie?
I am ready, I think. Yes, I'm ready.
Robert, are you ready?
Oh, Robert. Oh, don't get called that unless I'm in trouble. But okay, yes, I'm ready.
Oh, I haven't called you Bob. All right, we will begin in 3, 2, 1. Begin.
First poster you had on your bedroom wall.
New Kids on the Block.
Best F1 driver on the grid currently.
Lewis Hamilton, but it's tight.
What's your favourite cheese?
Camembert.
Mario or Luigi?
Mario.
If you were in the pit crew, which tyre would you change?
Left rear.
Cats or dogs?
Cats, because they're more independent.
If you could add a James Bond style gadget to an F1 car, what would it be?
Invisibility.
Oh, we've not had that before. I love that.
That's a good one.
Favourite musician or musical group?
David Bowie.
First memory of F1?
James Hunt's voice commentating on the TV.
Sleep in or get up early?
Get up early.
If you're in a superhero movie, are you the hero or the villain?
Villain.
Yes. Favourite livery of all time?
JPS Lotus.
Favourite F1 driver of all time?
Jimmy.
Yes. If you could add a venue to F1, where would it be?
A venue. The Northwest 500.
What's your favourite food?
Steak.
Wet or dry race?
Dry.
Would you rather be chased by one horse-sized duck or 10 duck-sized horses?
10 duck-sized horses.
Which two drivers from different eras would you like to see go head-to-head?
Senna and Gilles Villeneuve.
If you could swap the cars out for different transportation, what would you pick?
Hovercraft.
Ooh. Moustache or mullet?
Mustache.
What would you
And
give
we
the
are at
winners?
time. That is
Oh,
time.
come on, last question right there. I
That
wanted
was
to know what
time.
she'd give the winners instead of champagne.
Well, excellent job, Lizzie. Fantastic job. But New Kids on the Block, I'm going to share something with you in a second, but that was your first poster on your wall?
It was, yeah. Unfortunately, it wasn't anything to do with cars. I wanted it to be, but I have to be honest.
No, that's fine. I'll share this in solidarity with you. My first concert I ever saw was New Kids on the Block.
And with that, we're going to finish recording the podcast and never do another one.
Yeah, we won. It was a charitable thing at my school, and we won some contest, and my whole school got to go see New Kids on the Block. So I went. It was great.
You danced, didn't you, Brian?
You loved it.
Yes,
I
you did.
Yeah, I'm a boy band fan. 98 Degrees, is that a band? I don't know. I'm making them up now. No, but it was my first concert, so that's great. And then David Bowie. Now though,
Yes.
yeah, of course. So I was hoping you'd say New Kids on the Block again, but
Sadly not. No.
oh, well, that was awesome. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for sharing some of your time with us, and a chance to talk to a fellow F1 fan was amazing. So Lizzie, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, I'm not going to lie. I felt a little bit under pressure when we were discussing the Jim Clark episode, given that she absolutely, without doubt, I think knows what Jim had for breakfast on every single day that he was alive.
I don't know about that, but that was great. So Lizzie, thank you again. If you want to be on the 100 seconds of DRS, as I likely just said, hit us up on Twitter at F1 Dirty Side. We have run dry of having these in the can, as the experts in the industry say, and we've had one person just reach out, so we will follow up, but we're happy to record some more. Thanks all you for doing that. We love it. But it is almost race week. It's time for a preview. Are you as excited as I am? Cars on Track.
I am, and it's more than that. As well as being a preview of a race week, it's a preview of a race week for the first time this season. A sprint.
A sprint race.
Oh yes. So we will be going to Baku. 51 laps of a 3.73 mile circuit, which apparently is the fourth longest on the calendar. Don't ask me for the other three because I didn't write them down, so I can't remember what they are. But there's three that are longer. There's 20 corners, which felt a lot, but maybe it's not. I don't know. I do love this one.
I do too. I love it. I think a little more than you even. We've argued this before. I love Azerbaijan and this race. I felt like last year was a little bit of a stinker.
It was,
Yeah.
and what I was going to say, I love this one as from an aesthetics perspective.
Yes.
I actually love the look of this race, like the
Yes.
old town, the castle, all that kind of stuff. The crazy bit, that one corner where they go between kind of the old buildings that just doesn't look like there's enough room to get an F1 car through there. I loved it visually, but yes, it has let us down a couple of times.
It has, for sure. And then this is actually where Charles, a few notes, this is where Charles stuffed his Ferrari into the barrier outside the castle with this.
I am stupid. I am stupid.
Famous audio came from his car. This is also where, as you said, Rob, I agree, the aesthetics are amazing. As you kind of go through the town and you see the like apartment buildings with the balconies. Renato, I know, man, if we're going, you're coming. I know you're listening and I know you're excited like me. Rob, I was at a party last night, an event. It was amazing. I promised a couch to my friend Paul too. So like we got to go because I'm running out of room.
Well, it depends. I mean, how big is this apartment going to be? I mean, if we're like
Small.
taking the entire top floor or something, like
No,
you're having
small,
Dirty
tiny.
Side in Baku, come on.
How much money do you think we got? This is gonna be an Airbnb. We're gonna get like
No,
one
we're going to get
balcony.
sponsored for it. You know,
Yeah.
it's going to get to critical mass now because look, there's me and you, Renato, and Paul. I mean, that's like 4 whole people that are going to go, right? So this is soon going to get picked up by someone big. I can see Vincenzo will be part of our marketing team and will get us a big deal for this. But
It is.
right, let's stop talking stupid and get back to some.
So it's a
get
sprint.
back to some stats.
It is a sprint. So we'll have Friday practice and then Friday quali, Saturday practice, and then the Saturday sprint, followed by the race on Sunday. So just be prepared for a different layout than we've had so far this year. The race has been run 5 times as the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but once before that in 2016 as the European Grand Prix, also at Baku at this track. And you found some interesting notes on this in terms of who's won.
Yeah. I saw this, I think Molly, who came on the other week, or maybe the tech heads kind of tweeted it as well. There's never been a repeat winner. So even when you put the European non-Azerbaijan GP, because that was won by Nico Rosberg, the other held as the Azerbaijan GP, we've had Danny Rick, Lewis, Valtteri, Checo, and Max last year. So we've never had anyone win twice.
So I do really love this. Not just the aesthetics. I love the race. Usually that long straight is fun. If you remember, in 2017, Valtteri took second place off Lance right at the line. Like literally last lap coming up to the start-finish line. During that long straight, Valtteri just took Lance, pipped him right at the line. So that was fun. In 2021, Lance had a blowout at the beginning of that straight. His car was sideways on the sort of left side as you're approaching it of the straight. Max had that massive blowout of his rear tire towards the start-finish line in the grid. And so then we restarted after that, and Lewis looked like he had it. He had Checo on the outside. Lewis had a chance to win. This was, again, if everyone remembers, when Lewis and Max were battling. Max is out. Lewis has a chance to take the victory, but he left his brake magic on, screwed up his brake bias, and had to go into the runoff, finished last. So it has produced, for whatever reason, some great racing, with the exception of last year. So I'm just hoping we kind of get one of those bangers that I love from Baku. But again, like I said, if they just showed up and put them on, scooters and told them to go around the track 3 times, I'd be watching.
Yeah, true. And on the kind of the no repeat winners things, I kind of said when I was replying to a tweet, I'm like, okay, will we break the trend this year? Yeah, we probably will. Let's say Max is likely to become the first ever repeat winner, but what are the odds on it being a carbon copy podium from last year. So last year we had Max from Checo from George, and I don't think it sounds like outside the realms of possibility to see that happen all over again. So we could go from no repeat winners to complete repeat podium, because it's going to be interesting, as we were talking about with the fifth wheel guys, to just see, does anybody upset the order this weekend by any upgrades that they've brought? And you believe that Aston have kind of maybe done the majority of the upgrades they're going to have, or that was the biggest hit they were going to have. So if Mert brings something, maybe Lewis or George does his foot on the podium this week. I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see.
What about you, Ferrari boy? I mean, I know they struggled last year. Not even just the team engines, but the customer engines were blowing up. What do you think's going to happen with Ferrari this year at Baku?
I mean, there were no safety cars last year, and there were a few virtual safety cars. Let's just move on. Let's not talk about Ferrari things. Let's just oh no, because what's the other note? Yeah, Charles broke down, like you said last year. I mean, I don't want to get onto it. Nope. Right. Move on.
Well, there's nothing else to move on to except waiting for the race to happen.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, one final thought on this is that, joking aside, I would absolutely love, and again, this isn't an anti-Red Bull theme, but I would absolutely love anybody, likely not going to be Ferrari, let's say it's Aston or Mercedes, to bring something that gives us all that glimmer of hope that this isn't done and dusted, and that someone is going to carry the fight. Because I want to be 100% proven wrong. We all know my theory that Red Bull are going to win easily until 2026. I would absolutely love to eat humble pie and be as wrong on that as I think I was on my opinion of Lance Stroll.
Yeah, agreed. I'm looking for a good race. And you know what? Regardless, whether it's great, good, medium, I'll be sitting in the background with this pumping. I mean, how good is that? It's so good. It's not even my kind of music. It just gets me so riled up, baby. So with that,
I think actually, how long is your clip that you've got of that? Have you got like the whole thing?
Not really, but yeah.
How long is it? Come on.
It's 2 minutes and 55 seconds.
Oh, let's just play. I think we should leave from the beginning of it, and then we'll fade to the dirty side outro. But I think it does require.
It has a great start.
You're going now. You're going now. Okay, hands in the air, everyone, and we will see you next week.
It's so good.
Dance all the way to Baku.
Hey now.